Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep into something I think a lot of you are dealing with, the financial pressures on families,
Yeah.
even those with two incomes.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at The Two-Income Trap by Elizabeth Warren
Yeah.
and Amelia Warren Tyagi.
Okay.
This book really digs into why families are struggling these days, even though a lot of times both parents are working
Right.
more than ever before.
It is. It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? You
Yeah.
think that two incomes would mean families are better off financially, but
Right.
it's a lot more complicated than that.
Absolutely. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about the book was that it debunks this myth
Mm-hmm.
that families today are just spending all their money on frivolous things.
Right.
You hear that all the time, right? Like
Yes.
lattes and avocado toast are like
Yeah.
the root of all our financial woes. But the data from the book tells a different story.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, you're right. That is something you hear a lot. But if you actually look closely, it doesn't hold up. The book shows that people are actually spending less on those non-essentials.
Really?
Like families are spending 22% less on food and 44% less on appliances than they used to.
Wow.
Even entertainment has only gone up by 23%.
Okay.
So where is all the money going?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
The book says the real problem is that the costs of necessities have gone way up,
Right.
particularly for things like housing and education.
Yes. And it's not just that people want like fancier homes.
Yeah.
It's this competitive market where everyone wants good schools and safe neighborhoods.
Sure.
The book actually points out that families with children, their median home value went up by 78% between 1984 and 2001.
Okay.
Compared to couples without kids, that was only 26%.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Really highlights what lengths families will go to.
Yeah.
To make sure their kids have the best opportunities.
Yeah.
It's like this hidden cost of education.
Yeah.
Just woven into the housing market.
Uh-huh.
But one of the things that I found really interesting was the book's discussion of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? That legislation was intended for good, but actually contributed to this housing bidding war.
Right. It's one of those things where a good intention can end up having some downsides.
Yeah.
It was supposed to prevent discrimination in lending,
Okay.
which was a big problem. But it ended up meaning that lenders could consider both incomes when they approved mortgages.
Uh-huh.
Before, it was mostly the husband's income that mattered.
Interesting.
So all of a sudden, you've got couples with two incomes. They can borrow a lot more. They can bid higher. And so this creates an advantage for two-income couples and a disadvantage for single-income families.
Yeah. So it's not even just like keeping up with the Joneses. You can't even compete in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the book has this example of University City in Philadelphia. And when they built a new elementary school there,
Uh-huh.
housing values around it tripled.
Really?
It wasn't because the houses were better, just
Wow.
the demand,
Yeah.
because people wanted to go to that school.
Mm.
And it had this perception of being better.
Right.
So the prices went way up.
That really shows how much housing and education are tied together these days.
Yeah.
But it's not just about getting into the right school district.
Right.
The cost of education itself has just gone through the roof
Oh, yeah.
across the board.
And it's not just college either.
Right.
The book talks about preschool costs.
Okay.
In some states, preschool can be more than college.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was that bad. Why is preschool becoming so expensive?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. There's a lot more emphasis on early childhood education.
Right.
People hear all these messages about how important those early years are.
See,
So
what-
you feel like you need to get them into a good preschool.
Yeah.
That creates more demand,
Uh-huh.
which drives up prices.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
We say it's more important, so it becomes more important.
Exactly.
And then it becomes more expensive and exclusive.
Right.
But the book also mentions something that I think we don't talk about enough
Okay.
when we're talking about family finances. And that's the role of the stay-at-home parent.
Uh-huh.
That's a good point.
Mm.
The book makes us rethink that. Not just the emotional value,
Yeah.
but also the financial value.
Okay.
Back when it was more common. For one parent to stay home, usually the mom,
Right.
they were doing a lot of things that now families have to pay for.
Yeah.
Childcare, elder care, cooking, cleaning,
Yeah.
all of that.
Right. So it was like a built-in safety net.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, just a buffer if something unexpected happened.
Mm-hmm.
The book has this really powerful story about the Ramirez family.
Oh,
Can you share that with our listeners?
sure. They had a son with special needs, so he needed a lot more care.
Okay.
When Carmen, the mom, was able to stay home, She took care of him.
And it saved them a ton of money.
Yeah.
But then things changed. And she had to go back to work.
Okay.
All of a sudden, they had all these medical costs.
Right.
They had to hire a nurse. They needed special therapies. Plus, childcare for their other kids.
Wow.
It was too much. They ended up having to declare bankruptcy.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
And it really shows you just how valuable a stay-at-home parent can be.
Yeah.
They're not just there to love and care for the kids. They're also doing all these things. That would cost a fortune if you had to pay for them.
Yeah. And the irony is that two-income families can actually be more at risk.
Really?
Because now you've got two incomes that could be affected if someone loses their job or gets sick.
So two incomes don't always mean more security.
Yeah. That's often a myth.
It seems like we've created a system that makes it really hard for families to succeed.
Uh-huh.
They're told they need two incomes.
Right.
But then everything costs so much.
Yeah.
And there's not enough support.
Exactly.
The book doesn't just talk about the problem, though. It also challenges some common ideas about why families struggle.
Okay.
Like this idea of the immoral debtor.
Right.
Can you talk about how the book debunks that?
Sure. The immoral debtor idea makes it sound like people who declare bankruptcy are just irresponsible.
Yeah.
Like they made bad choices. And now they're trying to get out of paying their debts.
Oh.
But the book actually looks at the data.
Okay.
And it shows a different story. Most bankruptcies are because of major life changes, like losing a job, medical problems, or a family breaking up. They're not living some lavish lifestyle.
Yeah.
They're just normal families who ran into a rough patch.
Yeah. It's so easy to look at people and say they're having financial troubles because it's their fault.
Uh-huh.
But the book makes a good point. You know,
All right.
we should look at the bigger picture
Exactly.
instead of just blaming people.
And the data shows these families try everything before bankruptcy.
Right.
They'll have their utilities shut off. They'll go without medical care. They even skip meals sometimes just to try to avoid going bankrupt.
That's awful.
It is.
So it's not about being a bad person.
Right.
Sometimes bankruptcy is the only option left.
It is a last resort when you've run out of choices.
And even after bankruptcy, things are still hard.
Yeah.
You know, bad credit, the stigma of it.
Exactly.
It's a tough road.
It is.
One thing that got me thinking was this idea that the things families do to try to improve their lives, like buying a good house, you know,
Yeah.
or getting a good education, can actually make them more vulnerable financially.
It's true.
How do we deal with that?
It's tough. There aren't any easy solutions.
Right.
But the book says that the way we do housing and education
Yeah.
makes things way too competitive.
Right.
And families don't have any room for error. It's like playing a game with really high stakes.
And no safety net.
Right.
So it's not that families are making bad choices.
No.
They're just responding to how the system works.
Exactly.
One solution the book talks about is public school vouchers.
Oh.
That's always a controversial topic.
It is.
How does the book say vouchers could help with this two-income trap?
Well, the book says that vouchers could disconnect housing and education.
Okay.
So families could choose where to live,
Right.
and their kids could still go to a good school.
So they wouldn't have to buy into an expensive neighborhood just for the schools.
Exactly.
They could use the voucher to send their kids to any public school,
Right.
no matter where they live.
Exactly. It could give families more options,
Okay.
even if they don't have a lot of money.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But anytime you're talking about public money, you have to be careful.
Right.
What are some of the issues they raise?
Well, one concern is what happens to public schools.
Yeah,
Will they lose funding if people use vouchers?
sure.
The book says it's really important to invest in all public schools, not just create a way out for the families who can afford it.
It's a balancing act for sure.
It is.
You need good policy, and people have to work together.
Absolutely.
Besides education, the book also talks about disability insurance being important for families with two incomes.
Oh, definitely.
Because if someone can't work anymore, it can really help.
It's like a safety net.
But it doesn't get talked about a lot.
No, not really.
It's like, we don't want to think about the possibility of something bad happening.
I think people like to focus on the good stuff.
Right.
That if you work hard and have two incomes, everything will be fine.
Uh-huh.
But things happen,
They do.
and you have to be prepared.
The book really makes the point that we need to be honest about the risks families face.
Yeah.
And we need better support systems
Right.
for when things go wrong.
Definitely.
But to really fix this two-income trap, we need more than just individual solutions.
We do.
We need to change how we think as a society.
I agree.
Don't you think?
Yeah, the book says we need to start just focusing on personal responsibility
Right.
and look at the things in the system that are making things harder for families.
It's about asking ourselves what kind of society we want.
Right.
Are we okay with families always struggling just to get by?
Yeah.
Or do we want everyone to have a real chance to succeed?
Those are the questions the book leaves you with.
Yeah. The two-income trap makes you think.
It does.
It's not just about managing your money.
It's about our values,
Right.
our priorities,
Yeah.
and the kind of future we want. Yeah, it makes you think about what we can do to make things better.
Right. It's a call to action.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in our own lives,
Uh-huh.
worrying about our bills and our budgets.
Yeah.
But this book makes you look at the bigger picture.
It does. It makes you realize that a lot of families are struggling.
Right. And that our
Yeah.
personal struggles are part of something bigger.
Exactly.
It's not just about trying harder.
No, we need to fix the system.
So, as we finish up our deep dive into the two-income trap,
Yeah.
what really stuck with you? What are you going to keep thinking about?
I think for me, it's realizing that the American dream,
Yeah.
that idea of owning a home and getting ahead, it's not as easy as it used to be.
It's not just hard
Oh.
work anymore.
Right. Things have changed.
And we need to change with them.
We do.
For me, I think it's how the book uses data.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just opinions.
Mm-hmm.
It's real research.
Right. It's evidence.
So as we wrap things up, we want to leave you with some questions.
Okay.
Think about your own life and the people you know.
Uh-huh.
How has this two-income trap affected you?
What can families do to protect themselves?
Yeah, and what needs to change in our society to fix this?
These are important questions.
And we need to talk about them.
We do.
The two-income trap is a big problem,
It is,
but we can solve it,
if we understand it,
right, and work together.
to build a better system,
A system where families can thrive.
not just survive.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive,
We hope you learned something.
and that it gave you something to think about.
Keep learning
Keep asking questions.
and keep fighting for a better world.
See you next time.